So let's be clear, democracy isn't only threatened by outside forces, it can also wither from within if Canadians decide it doesn't work for them. The latest report card from the Samara Centre for Democracy suggests there is reason to be concerned. Samara is a national non-partisan charitable organization dedicated to making Canadian politics more accessible, responsive and inclusive. It's also one of our key Democracy Project partners. Michael Morden is the research director for Samara and joins me now from Toronto. Michael Morden, first of all, thanks for taking time to speak with me. It's good to see you again.
Hi, Peter. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Your report card gives the state of Canada's democracy this time around as a B-. How did you determine that grade?
Well, we have an index that looks primarily at three things. How Canadians communicate about politics, that means talking about politics with one another and talking to our elected representatives. How we participate in politics in the myriad ways that are available to us beyond voting. And then what we think of the quality of our political leadership. And we build a scale which is designed specifically so that we can observe the small changes in the health of Canada's democracy so we can provoke improvement and also see where we're starting to slip.
Okay, how does a B- compare to the last report card?
Last report card was also a B-. So the overall result turned out the same, which masked some sort of fairly positive trends and also some areas of concern.
Okay, what are some of the warning signs?
Sure. Well, the first thing that kind of jumped out at us is we asked, for the first time, if Canadians felt that their democracy was getting stronger or weaker. Nearly half said weaker, a much smaller number said stronger. Some said they didn't know. So that's an indication that Canadians are watching developments with great concern and have some concern about our future.
How do they feel it's being weakened?
We didn't probe too deeply. There's some positive signs as well. Canadians seem to be tuned in ways that they haven't been in the past, but there's still ongoing disaffection, which is nothing new. We haven't seen dramatic change in how we evaluate our parties and MPs. In some cases, we're actually a little bit more satisfied than we were a couple of years earlier. Nevertheless, I think there's a sense that the quality of leadership is lacking in certain instances. We're not hearing as much from our elected representatives, even as we're reaching out more. So while Canadians are tuned in and engaged and ready to participate, we have ongoing, long-standing grievances with our political leadership.
Okay, let's drill down on a couple of these kind of measurements.
Sure.
You found 73% of Canadians reported having a discussion about politics in the last year. And that number's been rising from report card to report card. Why does that matter?
That's sort of that's the social building blocks of a democracy. We don't do democratic politics by ourselves in our basement. We have to hear from one another. It's also just a very simple direct indicator of the extent to which we're paying attention and care. So to be frank, we were surprised at the magnitude of that improvement, and that's a fairly positive thing. It's up, it was down around 60% of Canadians around this time prior to the last federal election, which actually saw more participation than we've seen in a while. So that to me is one of the most encouraging signs.
A growing number of Canadians, although still less than half at 42%, say they contacted an elected representative in the last year. Why is that important?
Well, for our elected representatives to go, speak on our behalf, reflect our values and our priorities, they need to hear from us, and citizens have some responsibility there. Now, it needs to be a good two-way conversation. We can get to that. But the first step is citizens need to reach out. And again, there's a jump there that frankly surprised us.
Okay, you talk about the two-way conversation. There seems to be not quite as much love coming the other way here. 54% of Canadians say they were contacted by a party candidate or MP in the last year, but 46% say they received no contact at all in 2018. What does that tell you?
Yeah, there's been a real drop-off on that front, which is sort of curious. We asked Canadians a whole bunch of different methods by which MPs can reach them: email, social media, phone, in person, and in every category, Canadians are reporting less contact. So MPs have a responsibility too to reach out, to hear from us, to make that effort, to meet us halfway, and also to communicate what work they're doing in Parliament. That's really sort of fairly essential in bringing citizens along. So something's happened there in the last couple of years. We can't diagnose it, but it's an area of concern, something to watch.
What do people think of the work of their members of Parliament?
Canadians are marginally more satisfied than they were when we first started asking, which is interesting given conversations, for instance, around populism. There's nothing in our data to suggest that Canadians have suddenly and dramatically, turned away from our institutions and our political leaders. The change, if it's been positive, has been very, very modest. But we also probed a little bit deeper, asked citizens what they think MPs are good at and not so good at. And I think Canadians nailed that one. They suggested more Canadians think MPs are good at reflecting the views of their parties. Significantly fewer Canadians think MPs are good at reflecting the views of their communities.
And if there's a problem for our democracy long term, part of it lies there, doesn't it? If there's this sense that it's essentially a trickle-down process, that it comes from what they're doing in Ottawa down to the constituents and not the other way around, not the concerns going the other way, that could be a problem, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think that's sort of planting the seeds for long-term disaffection of a very serious kind, which would cause Canadians to question whether or not it's even worth their turning up to participate.
You also found out Canadians are concerned that the House of Commons is not reflecting the changes in the Canadian population and Canadian society. What did you see, and why are people feeling that way?
Well, we along with asking Canadians, we also took a look at the extent to which Parliament reflects the diversity of the Canadian population. We were able to use 2016 data, which shows that the House of Commons is lagging. I mean, we know that women are obviously systematically and consistently underrepresented. Visible minorities, Indigenous peoples, foreign-born Canadians are all occupy fewer shares, a smaller share of the seats of the House of Commons than their share of the population. So there's a chance for Parliament to catch up in 2019, but Canadians perceive that lag, and that has a number of consequences.
Okay, let's quickly go through your recommendations here, three of them, three main ones. Strengthening and the collective and democratic skills and habits. How do we do that?
I think there's any number of ways. We called earlier in the year for more investment in civic literacy. That's the kind of knowledge and skills that's necessary for good democratic citizenship. It's more than just the old grade 10 civics class where you learn about 3 orders of the state, et cetera. It's about learning about how to find yourself in the political world, how to make a difference, how to pursue change. And you can do that in classrooms, but you can also do that through investment in adult education as well.
Okay. Number 2, equipping government institutions for better decision making. How does that happen?
There's a whole number of things we need to do to make our parliament a little bit healthier. Despite reasonable satisfaction amongst Canadians, we're not satisfied with how Parliament works. And there's no single fix, there's no silver bullet. It's a lot of little tweaks that can empower MPs to actually be that independent representative that can reflect the views of their constituents.
All right, let's finish on this. And this is an important one, almost an immediate call to action here at this moment in time. Making elections a moment for genuine deliberation. Tell me more.
We need a certain level of civility, a constructive discourse. We need parties to present platforms that are substantive, that are costed, amongst other things, so that Canadians are given a meaningful choice in the fall. There are lots of signs of a promising democratic moment in 2019, from the fact that Canadians are talking about politics, the fact that they're more interested in politics than they've been in the recent past. But there's no guarantees that we're going to realize the potential there unless leaders, parties, candidates allow Canadians to believe that they have a meaningful choice to make.
All right, Michael Morden from Samara. Thank you so much for your time today, Michael. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much.